So good to see you.
Yeah,
You look great.
I got my hair back.
I know, it looks great. Good evening and welcome to the Township of North Dudley Special Council meeting for August 16th, 2023. Before I start the council meeting, I'd like to show some gifts that we've received from Ayrshire, South Ayrshire, and from the provost, Ian Campbell. And first is a plaque, which is says South Ayrshire and Council, and never forget the people. I think that's pretty good. And we also received another gift from them, which is quite adorable. It's a curling rug, a mini curling rug. You see this? With their logo on the bottom. So we will maybe send a little letter of thanks, CEO McNeely down to them, and greatly appreciated. And thank you to the Ayrshire fan and Derek Austin for being representing council over there and meeting with the folks. So, getting back to the meeting, yes, members of the public have been provided with the following methods to watch and participate in this open meeting electronically. First off, attend the township office located at 2958 Mayfield Road. Second, watch the live stream by accessing the meeting on the township's YouTube page. Third, attend electronically to observe the meeting or to speak to an item on the agenda. And fourth, submit written comments to the clerk's division that have been provided to the mayor and council prior to the meeting and will form part of the public record. I'd now like to call the meeting to order. And can I have approval of the agenda, please?
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Hosner, that council adopt this August 16, 2023 council agenda as presented.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Next up is the interview's acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional autonomous territory of the Anishinaabe and the Neutral. We acknowledge their enduring presence of the indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contributions to our community. We offer this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation between indigenous and non-indigenous peoples. And as we reflect on what's happened in the past, I can't even imagine the children from or the brutalization that's happened. And I can't imagine missing women. And so many horrors, and it is time that all of this stops. And that we treat everybody fairly and with respect and dignity, regardless of whether you're indigenous, white, black, LGBT. So we can pause please for a moment as we reflect on dignity for all. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none. Item for consideration, report number FIN 17/2023, the 2024 budget drivers and schedule. CEO McNeely will provide council with an overview report. CEO McNeely, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report identifies some of the key drivers that are influencing the preparation of the draft 2024 budget. And as council is aware, it's been in the media off and on, it's almost for the last 18 months. We continue to be in unsettled economic times. Inflation, well, has been it's been a downward trend since its high of about a year ago. We continue to see still relatively high inflation rates. Yesterday, the Bank of Canada published a 8% June up to 3.3 up from July. That was largely reflective of the increasing costs for petroleum-based products. We witnessed the gas price. That translates across spectrum in terms of manufacturing, durable goods, and We have tried to identify to council some areas where we expect to witness increased costs this coming year, including our corporate insurance coverage. We're anticipating a 10 to 15% increase in our corporate insurance policy. We are anticipating reductions in provincial transfer grants. We were hit with over $100,000 decrease last year, and we are anticipating some factor. Obviously, that has this influence because we have to make up those dollars. And if you remember, generally, Senate raised taxation generates about $60,000. So, right off the bat, probably 1.5% if we have to make up continued reduction in government transfer payments year-over-year. The second part of the report focuses on matters attributed to the budget schedule. And we've given you the entire budget schedule as an attachment, and you can see the work actually started on the 2024 budget about 7 weeks ago. And we'd wrap up with the final tax rate bylaw being considered by council April of 2024. And throughout this period, there are specific touch points with council, and there are some additional council dates identified for the January, February time period of 2024 to deal specifically with the budget. And then there's other touch points associated with the budget that are on typical finance committee meetings that are typically scheduled the first Monday, the first meeting of each month.
Okay, that costs you a second. So, when are we gonna get those? Because they should be in my calendar now because I've already given it to you.
The council today
Yes.
adopts the staff report. that
And I'm gonna
populated it.
if they've noticed it and check their calendars.
But until council adopts the
Yeah.
schedule, there won't be any online input.
Right, but I'm saying,
But tonight, if council adopts the budget schedule and those meeting dates, then the online invites will go over that 24 to 48 hours. So the second part of that report is the budget schedule, including some of those special dates set aside for the budget. And then obviously we'll be making that known publicly so that people understand how the budget is being developed and when they have opportunities to feed into the budget before it's finally approved by council in the late winter or spring of 2024. The last item is we always ask council for permission to establish a framework of what we're allowed to operate within as we prepare a draft budget for council to consider. That would be that December 23 deliverable to council, and then our budget deliberation meeting starting in mid-January 2024. Staff was asking for 3.5% upper threshold for the increase year-over-year as part of the tax rate increase above the assessment growth. And that companion to that 1% increase would be attributed to dedicated increase in transfers to reserves, once again, year-over-year. That extra funds obviously help us meet our obligations for the 10-year capital forecast as we continue to grow our reserves to deliver upon 10-year capital forecast. So those are the key highlights in the report. Certainly members of council, if there's specific questions in the content of the initial report, treasurer or I are available to answer those questions.
questions. Councilor Thompson?
Second by Council Rowland, that the report number 17-2022 be received. And that council maintain the past practice to increase the transfer to capital reserves of a minimum of 1% of the 2024 municipal levy over the total capital reserves allocated from taxation in 2023 to assist in funding the 10-year capital forecast. And that staff be directed to prepare and submit the 2024 draft operating and capital budget in a maximum guideline of 3.5% increase in the municipal tax rate after accounting for adjustment growth. And that staff published and adopted 2024 budget meeting schedule in conjunction with the 23-24 council meeting schedule on the township's website, social media accounts as part of the ongoing public consultation and community outreach program. And that the following meetings be scheduled as presented. Thank you.
All those in favor? Hearing, thank you. Okay. Next is report 18-2023 10-year capital forecast, first draft, Christina Box.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have a presentation to go along with the 10-year capital. As I go through it, if there are any questions, please let me know. I do have to pause, or we can have a full discussion afterward as at this time of year, we typically present you the first draft of this 10-year capital forecast. And this is to help with staff projecting longer term forecasts on the direction that council would like us to take for longer leads or larger items. It allows us to start looking at funding models and understand how much we need to put aside if we would be able to projects in the future. It also helps us project an overall picture for the direction of the financials for the township. Because capital items tend to be our largest number now. This also helps to smooth out as we do tend to fund all of our capital through reserve transfers. This does eliminate the need to increase tax one year if we do a large project and then decrease it the next, and it provides for a more consistent and financial model for our repairs as well. At this time, with this draft, we are hoping that you will provide us feedback and directions so that we can make sure that our forecast is in the direction that council is looking for us. Some of the key changes in this 10-year forecast from the one you would have seen back in April is we have of course added the year 2033, which is the 10-year out, and we've done it in 2023. We've also adjusted quite significantly our base numbers to reflect more accurate pricing in the marketplace from 2023. The total capital campaign was increased to $127 million from $111 million that we saw back in January. The significant parts of this relates to a better understanding of construction costs and relates to some of our larger capital projects that have been provided with in more truthed out accurate numbers. You'll see in the forecast that the largest centers of our funding relate to infrastructure and our facilities. This slide just shows an overall basis of where we plan to spend the funds in the next 10 years. You can see again, 43% of our funding will go towards our facilities, upgrades, refurbs, and rehabilitation. 34% is on our infrastructure and stormwater, roads, bridges, capital projects. 13% is for our fleet and motor. We have 6% for our enhancements in our parks and our trail system, and then 4% relates to equipment, studies, and software. In order to fund these capital projects, as I stated previously, we do try and set aside the money through reserve transfers in previous years to build up the funds so that by the time the asset needs replacement and rehabilitation, those who have been using and enjoying the asset have helped to contribute to replacement for it. The significant source of funding over the next 10 years is from taxation dollars. Significant part of that is actually going back into refunding of debt. You'll see the last two lines of reserves and debt, and I would like to remind council that those are really more of a financing model. Reserves are funds that we have already raised and set aside for future projects, and the debt is projects that we have yet to commit those funds to, and we will have to raise funds in the future to be able to pay for them. You will also see that we do have significant funding still from our developer charges that help go towards our growth related activities, government grants, whether that is, I always get the new name wrong, but the old gas tax money, maybe the building fund, and the OCFA program as well. Then we also have funds that come in through the parkland development into the parkland funds. The money we receive from the aggregate fees goes into a reserve to help us pay for our infrastructure project. And then I apologize, it's still called Energy Plus Reserve here, but that is our payments we receive from Grand Bridge Energy. Within the 10-year capital, we are looking at some very large bid dollars, which would require us to issue debt in order to be able to finance them. The projects that we are looking at is the public work development, specifically the phase 2, which is the equipment facility. Also, the development of a twin pad project would require significant amounts of debt, and the reconstruction or adaptation of the ACC when it's no longer needed as an ice rink into a gymnasium. You will see that we have one last year of payments for this building itself. As of next fall, we will have fully paid off the debt that was raised to pay for this. So the numbers get quite high. Every year, the province releases what our annual debt repayment limit is, and that is a factor of our own revenue sources and limiting factors. For 2023, that number is just over 2 million. So we are still within our debt repayment limits, because that number should grow every year as our revenues grow. But we are using a very large portion of it in this forecast. And it is just something that council needs to be aware of, that if we fully go down this road with all of these projects on this timeline, we will eliminate some of our flexibility should we council desire to do different projects in the future or to fund emergencies. Doesn't mean that there isn't some, but there's not a lot of flexibility in the future. We have been using the development charges to fund the repayment of debt for this construction. We had not originally, used it originally, but the future debt, we are looking at taxation dollars to repay. Over the next 10 years, the use of taxation funds will be to transfer funds into our reserves for for specific projects that we have identified within the forecast. That continues to grow annually as we look to increase by 1% a year or more, depending on what our funding model has indicated. There are some minor items that we do not have reserves set up for, so we would have to raise taxation dollars in those years to pay for it. And then the bulk of it actually will be for repaying the debt. So you can see that by 2028, we will have issued debt for the 3 projects, and then that number will stay consistent for the balance of the 20 years of the debt. Whereas the blue line continues to increase because that continues to be our share of growth assessment that we are putting and taxation that we are putting away. The 3 main projects, as I've stated, that very much contribute to the largest spends in the 10-year capital relates to the redevelopment of the public works. Council saw previously a master plan for that. 3 phases are showing up in the current 10-year forecast, and then there will be future phases that exceed that 10-year period. Phase 1 is well underway with the tender out in the marketplace for the building of the office and staff areas, and then phase 2 is in 2026. The sequencing of the twinning of the arena here, we are well underway on the design work and are expecting that to be finished up this fall, with construction due to commence in 2024. Once that construction is complete and we no longer need the ice down at the ACC, that is when we would redesign it to suit a different purpose. This forecast contains it as a redevelopment into a gym. What we are hoping to hear from council tonight is what your discussion is on whether we should drop, modify, add in, or change any of the projects in terms of timing, or was there something in the forecast that you would like to see that is not there, or a project that you no longer wish, or anything of that nature. One thing that is not yet in the 10-year capital, but has been undertaking some studies and further costs associated with. We have previously reported to council that the Nithsdale Bridge rehabilitation into an off-road trail connection, that project is not yet in the 10-year capital. And depending on which options council wishes to pursue, we are estimating a minimum of 1.6 to 3 million in 2022 dollars. If we were to add this project in, at this time, we do not have reserves set aside for it, so we would probably increase the amount of debt we have to spend on it, depending on when that project was being undertaken. If it's later in the 10-year capital, it is possible that we would have been able to save up enough funding, so the closer it is, more likely we would have or debt financing the company. My next series of slides takes us through a high level of major changes on each schedule. So again, I'm happy to run through all of my slides first, or if there is something on one of those schedules that council wishes to talk about, that might be an appropriate place to stop. In the fleet or rolling stock schedule A, back in January, the question was raised about are we turning in our cars and light duty pickup trucks too soon? So we did look into it, and we have extended their life from 8-year replacement cycles to 9-year replacement cycles. We have also made sure that our forecast is now following council's direction with the Transform WR program to make sure that at this time we are going to hybrid vehicles wherever possible. There are certain of our fleet that will still require diesel or gas at this time, but where there is a valid option, we are moving towards that hybrid model.
Yeah, sorry.
Councillor Lawson, go ahead.
Thank you. When you're talking rolling stock for public works, that includes snow plows, all those vehicles. Theoretically, can last a lot longer than 8 or 9 years.
So the reference, Councillor Austin, is our light duty, so that's the pickup trucks or cars. The fleet of dump trucks is a 12-year replacement cycle, and the government tire equipment, like the grader or the loader or the tractor, is 15 years.
We're heading towards hybrids. Heading from charging stations.
So now there, the hybrid fleet that we've been checking out is self-charging. So as the vehicle drives, so for example, the current bylaw vehicle, the current chief's vehicle, they're hybrids, and they self-charge as they drive. So as you brake, it basically with the charger charges a separate alternator and keeps the battery component fully charged.
Thank you. You can see that our largest Public Works is the largest percentage of where our fleet is, and that's unfortunately where some of those larger snowplows and things of that nature, there really is no hybrid or electric option at this point, so those are the type of vehicles that we are not able to transform over, but those light duty vehicles, we have found a very good replacement for the hybrid, and it is seeing some fuel savings. Are there any questions on the fleet of rolling stock?
Sorry,
Go ahead, Councilor.
one more. When when I look across public works rolling stock, 2024, there's 956,822. Then in 2025, there's 1,451,000. Are those dollars to be spent or so each year we have basically $1 million worth of rolling stock that needs to be
Combination both of an actual purchase and or transfer to reserve.
okay. So that's not that's not broken down as to how much.
It is on sheet A. It gives you what the listed item is, the year in which it's scheduled for replacement over the 10-year period. And then down below, you see at the very, very bottom, before you get to the word funding, you'll see what the contribution to reserves is. Okay, so it's the actual purchase plus the transferred reserves. That's the average spend on an annual basis. So, over the 10-year horizon, we're projecting to spend approximately $9.3 billion. Remembering that's been indexed over the 10-year period. So it's slightly under $1 million indexed each year over the 10-year period. And that's a combination of the actual acquisition and the contribution annually to reserves. So in 2024, as an example, there's a spend of approximately $956,000. Of that, roughly 1/3, or $315,000, is the transfer to the rolling stock reserve of choice.
So on fleet rolling stock A for public works, those prices that are all on there, that's replacement in 2023 dollars.
Correct.
And then going through there, for example, the dump truck with three modules is due to be replaced in 24, as well as the Ford 1-ton.
So
Yeah, with one.
the multimodal dump truck actually is a bit of an anomaly. So if we follow that note, council actually ordered that vehicle 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
We've been waiting for the delivery of that truck because of supply chain disruption. It is scheduled now based on the vendor. It's actually up in Forest at Vikings the cab chassis is being fitted up as we speak. And they're projecting it's going to show up literally at the end of 2024 or the very early part of 2025. But that price of $463,000 is the price that we were quoted and we signed a contract on 2 years ago. Today, if we were to replace that vehicle, $510,000.
Just further to that, Councilor Ossner, if you look on page 5, for example, you'll see the first year is that base year funding of 2023. And then as we've extended it out, we've actually applied an inflationary factor to it to try and estimate what it would actually cost in the year of purchase. If there are no more questions on that one, I will move on to the next schedule. The next schedule is a combination of our equipment, our studies, and our software costs. Within that, wherever there is a feasible option, we are looking at electric powered equipment replacements. For example, some of the lawnmowers, the next phase of purchase will be an electric lawnmower, where that is currently available in the market. Our ice resurfacers, we're also looking at electric ones for the next purchase. So that has impacted the cost of those items. We are still waiting for the full implications of Bill 23 and the timing to make sure that our planning studies and zoning reviews and official plans, that timing may change depending on when that fully gets implemented, but we have done our best to estimate when we anticipate that work being done. Some of the studies are our usual requirements of we have to refresh our asset management plan every 5 years. We have to inspect our bridges every 2 years. Some of those things are legislative requirements, and others are more to enhance or understand our service level. The other thing that we have included is a few other software items that are going to help us further promote efficiencies within the department, interdepartmental transfers, and to help us move towards a more digital environment and is there any questions on any of the studies? Okay.
Hold one moment, Rita. What page you want to read?
On page 7 of this, of that, where it says the 5-year review of the official plan. I thought for 2019. Isn't that something that you had to review this year? And the next year?
2019. Not this-
Madam Mayor, right above that line, so the 5-year
Oh.
review is after we've adopted the new one. So in 2024, we've set aside approximately 375,000 to actually do the new official plan, recognizing the changes coming out of Bill 23. Council also directed staff to add additional dollars to do a deeper dive into aggregate policies. And so in 24, we've identified and spent approximately 375,000 for the official plan exercise. And then the next line below, in 2029, so 5 years later, we have the refresh just to tweak policy based on minor changes and new information that's resulted. And that's in accordance with the provisions of section 26 of the Planning Act, where council in 5 years has to have a touch point on its official plan document.
Carry on.
Schedule C is our infrastructure and our second largest of our capital spends comes under this program. Again, we have refreshed all of the costs to be a 2023 cost basis. Also within this, we have had to tweak and refine our stormwater management projects. We have relooked at the timing of the transition of gravel roads to paved roads. A lot of that is tying into new developments that are going in adjacent to them. So as those developments move forward at a faster rate, we have pulled those projects forward so that we are ready for that development to be open.
How many gravel roads should we have left?
So, Madam Mayor, the linear length, center line measurement would be approximately 22 kilometers.
I should mention that a good bulk of, a lot of those projects are funded through our development charges as they do relate to that network. There's also, we added in one of the traffic calming projects that was requested. And we have just tweaked the timing of some of the, as the design work is being done, the timing of when some of our road construction are completed. We have still kept an accelerated increase into the roads resurfacing every year. That is being increased at 5% for the earlier part of this 10-year capital. And then for the last few years, we have reduced that down to a 2% increase as we will not caught up on the bulk of our road work that had been done. Are there any questions on any of the?
So we're looking at doing the Jenkins Court spring pond cleanup and retrofit in 2024. Is that correct? Yeah.
So, Madam Mayor, that was actually a 23 deliverable. And we reported to council the results of those bid results. Ms. Raycroft has been in liaison with a consultant. Council asked us to go back and revisit was there an alternative way of reducing the scope of work because it relates to the physical removal of sediment in that basin? And could we do some pre-treatment or storage before entering into the storm pond, and therefore we wouldn't actually have to remove as much sediment? And so that work is underway, and we'll be reporting back those results to council in the late September, early October time period, when we have the place marker for that revised scope of work in 2024.
Thank you. Councillor Tilly. Anyone else for this?
As a point of interest, I just happened to be noticing on Highway 6 coming down from 401 to Hamilton. They're actually doing along Highway 6, doing the exact same thing with the department at our right now. So obviously, there's hopefully some good opportunities out there to get the price down. But it's something we can do in-house, like you would mention, where we could not maybe do any of the new build portion of it, but do some of the removals and disposal that was discussed. I believe a lot of does the Vicon. That's kind of like an option that would hopefully maybe reduce the cost of the fall.
So now, Mayor, through Councilor Kelly. So we've updated, going through the process right now, updating the chemical analysis. There appeared to be some false positives that may have created a scenario where there were certain products in the laboratory sample that truly weren't there, just were out of place. And so Mr. Recroft has caught that issue, and so there's a scope testing again to make sure that truly the sediment and its chemical composition is properly truthed out. Because if we excavate and we remove it from that parcel, then we must meet the soils table in terms of multiple disposition. And there's some scenarios, depending upon what the chemical analysis is, that we could use it for side slopes in scenarios where we're storing ditch systems. If there is other types of chemicals, maybe we can use it as cover at the landfill site, either in Cambridge or the Waterloo site. Other chemicals in it. So then we have to go to Lambeth or Hamilton to actually have the product treated and cleaned and disposed. And obviously, every scenario has additional trucking costs, so physical time, distance, travel, as well as the cost for tipping fees to have it processed and ultimately disposed. So we are hoping to do a couple things: better truth out the chemical composition of the product in the sediment base itself. We are looking at pre-treatment, which is looking at taking the existing stormwater that's generated through the roadside ditch and using a storm scepter to actually cleanse portions of the water flowing through that structure before it enters the storm pond, which means that we don't need to hold the water in the stormwater base as long. So instead of maybe 72 hours, it could be 36 hours. Which means we don't need as much capacity in the basin, which means we don't necessarily have to do as much excavation of the sediment. So it's not one aspect, we're looking at a whole series of chain sequences with the whole for reducing the overall exposure of that order of magnitude cost. But of equal importance, ensuring that we do have a robust system going forward to properly capture the rain events or snow melts. And that our final discharge meets all MOE requirements in terms of quality objectives.
And I would assume then the benefit of this going through this process is this can't be the only location that has this particular issue in our country. We've got to have other places that have the same sort of situation.
So in the 10-year forecast, we'll see the other storm ponds. Some of them are larger, some of them are smaller. But we have over the next decade, we're looking at 6 or 7 different facilities, some requiring the same level of care in terms of cleaning out sediment. In other cases, just fixing structure at the control unit. But we've done an inventory of our system that was captured in our asset management plan that we reported to council last July 22, sorry. And we are moving through the 10-year period, consistent with the recommendations coming out of that. Right now, what we're trying to do is better treat some of those numbers, and are there different ways of achieving the same end result, but at a lower capital cost. And on top of that, we are putting money away each year, so we build up reserves so that we can fill or respond properly to our 10-year commitments. Dealing with stuff like that.
Absolutely.
One of the things that, we had to do was put some of our road, resurfacing rehabilitation. That is now included in 2024, the budget line I see are for 2.9 million, right?
We layered 23 spend, we just sort of put it aside. And with this draft, we carried it and layered on top of what the normal spend would have been for calendar year 24. And so now you do the catch up. You're looking at the 23 and 24 program all rolled up.
If I could just add to that for one moment, is also, we'll see that the following year it drops to 0. That is not because you're playing catch up. That is because the reconstruction of Hall Street and Deep Street is where we're directing those funds back.
So you're looking at the Piper Street Bridge rehabilitation, so that's the property that that's Teresa Wilson's property. Is that correct? That's a bridge that we own, that the only person that uses it is Teresa Wilson.
No, the Piper Street Bridge is the bridge over the river next to the ACC.
Okay, I know you.
The bridge at the far end of Piper Street is privately owned.
What happens homes?
We did a title search. And we are not responsible for that bridge, it's privately owned.
Congratulations, thank you. Okay.
Just want to add one thing. When that bridge is going to be rehabilitated, would they not consider, I don't know if GRSK would do it or who would do it, dredging the Neff River, or dredging the Neff River to get it back down to, because we've had a lot of side and silt and dirt and everything come down, which brings the river up higher and higher. Would there not be a consideration to bridge the river through the town there as much as possible, get it back down so we can get some normal level?
So Madam Mayor, through Councilor Austin. So this capital forecast, when we talk about the bridge rehabilitation, whether we're talking about Piper Street or Jedburgh, we're talking about the bridge structure itself, ensuring that we do appropriate life cycle replacement and upgrades to ensure the structural integrity to get another 50+ years out of the life of the bridge. The issue of dredging the Neff River, as an example, some of it's privately owned, so the actual land where the water resides. In other cases, under public ownership. In most cases, it's conservation authority. It will be the responsibility of those individual corporations to undertake the dredging if they can secure the requisite permits of working in a water course. So, both provincial as well as federal legislation talks about what they call in-water works, and obviously fish habitat, species at risk and life are all part of that analysis. We'd be looking at significant spend to dredge the Neff River. And the other issue is meander belt erosion of the Neff each year is significant. And you could dredge it literally in 1 year and you could have it silt back in just because of the erosion that continues to occur each year based upon changes in vegetation along the water river bank. Trees that might come across the river and change the direction of the channel because it almost acts as a temporary dam. Ice events. It's significant. When you take a look at the Neff River and look at it 5-year increments of time, how much the threat of the water course changes. That's part of our cost when we're looking at bridges. Because we're worried about scouring and erosion in behind our bridge abutments, which would be the fatal to the structural integrity of the bridge. And because the NIF is so vulnerable to erosion, a lot of our time and effort is actually looking at the developed population, geomorphology of the river approaching the bridges, and then evidence of scouring at or adjacent to bridge abutments.
See, on the area, so you said that the Spanish Street, the bridge is the midfield.
No matter, this is the true Piper Street Bridge at the end of Stanley Street, transitioning going toward the ECC. The Nithfield Bridge is not part of this
Right.
current 10-year capital forecast as we continue to refine options and scenarios for township council. And there'll be a report coming this fall on some further refinements of the options on. There's a cost just to own that bridge. We cannot leave it in its present status. We know based on the reporting that the council got in December, that the current bridge, its current status is risk of failure. So, the question becomes, if we want to repurpose the bridge in the fullness of time, perhaps a pedestrian off-road trail bridge, but we necessarily can't afford to do it all initially. We have a minimum of partial demolition removal, perhaps of the existing superstructure in the deck, and just leave the bridge abutments. Is there a question that we need to do some work on those bridge abutments so they don't further deteriorate? That would then prejudice their ability to use this bridge abutment, so perhaps 5 years later, we come back to actually bolt on a new pedestrian cross utilizing the bridges abutments. So the consultant right now is looking at those implications and identifying order of magnitude. And what processes would be required. Because of the age of the bridge and its history, we're looking at a class environmental assessment on any scenario to build that bridge because of its location, but also its heritage aspects.
So getting back to the Piper Street, we will be probably looking for getting for that, like 329, we also plan as full.
So right now, all of our bridge replacements or enhancements do not account for government funding, just because as we work in today's world, there are no programs out there. Obviously, if in the fullness of time, 3 years out, 5 years out, a new funding stream opens up, it may be, or another bridge may be a candidate to advance forward. What is important is technical work is done. The annual assessment, sort of biannual assessment is done. And it justifies the spend and the priority rating to do whatever that refurbished work is. And obviously that's useful background information that will populate that future grant application if such a program comes out, let's say in 27.
And thank you, carry on, Christine, please.
There's no further questions on infrastructure. I'll move on to facility schedule. This is by far our largest spend. We are currently engaged in a facility life cycle study. Once that is finalized, that will potentially have impacts on our timing of regular maintenance and rehab of our facilities. For example, when we need to replace the roof or things of that nature. So hopefully in the January iteration of this, that new study will have been completed and I'll have that information as well. The other thing to note here is that we are looking at a few major projects for which the timing and sequencing is incredibly critical to maintain operations. And so I just wanted to highlight that fact to council.
So Madam Mayor, for the audience that may be watching at home, just to give some context, what we say is that we have some time sensitive projects. Identify the report, that was circulated part of the agenda, and we have talked to council in earlier reports We have an issue with the ACC and the current ice plant. TSSA, which is a licensing entity of the Mission Standards Group. They have put us on notice that the pressure vessel, which is a component of the ice plant, will not be able to be renewed in 2025. So we're talking September 2025, when we would normally start the ice plant up for the next winter season. So we have been working backwards from September 2025 as to a replacement of the ice surface. And so, certainly the design work we're currently doing on the twin pad arena contemplated here at the NDCC. We're finishing up, wrapping up the design work right now with the architectural firm. We're at 66% drawings. And we anticipate being back before council with tender ready documents as well as a class B, as in Bob, class B cost estimate at that point. To achieve a fall 2025 opening of the NDCC, we would need to go to the marketplace to seek competitive bids this fall. And we would have to commence construction of the twin pad starting in late winter of 2024 or the very early spring of 2024 to allow the construction window necessary to have a building opened in the August, September 2025 time period. So when Ms. Brock talks about some projects are time sensitive, if the intent is to maintain two ice surfaces and we're going to win, we need to meet that schedule. We are on that timeline. We continue at step level to be working to that timeline. But we wanted to stress to council those dates, if we're going to maintain two ice surfaces for fall 2025. That timetable is very, very tight. The ice plant at the ACC, just given its age, could fail at any point in time. But to the best of our knowledge, our first true pickup with the current system is the fall of 2025 and the ability to secure a new TSSA license.
Any questions? Councilor Bowman?
Hey, Ben, I was wondering if staff gives a bit more guidance on this. Perhaps we look at some scenarios such as funding, feasibility of building this twin pad along with building a gym at the ACC. One option. Option two, just rehabilitating the ACC, building a separate gym up here, or perhaps option three, going down to one ice surface and rehabilitating the ACC just into the gym. Staff can see us do those three scenarios and three costs, and then that might help us to go closer to what we did.
I believe we have that. What page is on your report again? I had most of the time that page 20.
It's 21 of the package, Madam Mayor, or page 8 of that actual report.
Yes, there we go. Okay, so discussion is, I assume now what we have Councilor Austin, okay?
Just one more comment to add to the wall. Did we not pay for a study to have this done to help us understand that, and that's how we got where we are now?
So, Madam Mayor, council has provided direction and monies. So we did the arena strategy in 2019. It identified that we would need two ice surfaces going forward based on existing profile, as well as the growth that was to be anticipated in the community over the next 5 to 10 year period. So that was our first litmus test, was the arena ice strategy. The council adopted it for the purposes of blueprint to inform next steps. Okay. So in 2022, council authorized a spend to retain an architectural firm, which we've done. Moon Mats has been contracted. Moon Mats has been working diligently. We reported in April with a concept plan. And council provided direction that staff is to continue on to prepare the detailed design package. So Moon Mats is now prepared 66% drawings in preparation this fall to have detailed design drawings ready, that if council is comfortable, we would be able then to go to the marketplace to receive competitive bids. And then council remove that milestone, council would then be in a position to award a contract to a general contractor to actually do the pack. So the current capital forecast is consistent with council's resolutions or direction to date. And that's what's shown on Schedule D. The recreation facilities program. We have the Twin Pad project construction over the 24-25 time horizon. And then the second step of that is once the ice is removed from the Air Community Center, we're then going through the process of converting what is today the ice surface at the ACC and converting it into a gymnasium type space. It's sequenced, but it's all the premise of the NDCC project being.
But this is all based on dollars back then. It's not based on today's dollars. So you know, there's the difference and we're now looking at 24 million. Absolutely. And then Councilor Roman.
I believe that, when these studies were done, staff kind of already built in, did you build in any future approximate costs of what we thought would be costs moving into 2025?
We did. So for example, we had been carrying the spend just for the Twin Pad at approximately $13.5 million. And that was based on the estimates that we were given by the industry when we did that aspect. Two key things have happened in the last 24 months. There is a shortage of labor. And there is a significant increase in construction material prices. And we've witnessed between 13 and 15% increase in each of the last 2 years. And so where we were thinking of 13.5 million, now grown to, we've identified and revised pricing for approximately $17 million for the Twin Pad project. And so factors coming out of COVID have artificially hyper-inflated certain areas of the economy, and one of them is construction of the buildings.
And that was not predicted by Councilor Roman.
The other thing is, looking at the 2023, January 2023 heavy forecast, at that time, staff were talking about pouring $4.7 million over 20 years to pay back a portion of the NDC Twin Pad. Now, in this report, August 2023, the little line that says $16 million funded over 20 years. So that's a huge increase. Also, the earlier report in January talked about getting about $6 million in grants. That's all gone now. It's not even about grants. So, are we going to ask the taxpayers of North Elmhurst Township for us to allow the borrow $16 million to build a second ice surface? That's a lot of money. A lot of other projects are going to be forward. I think we have to give serious pause whether or not we're actually going to build this ice pad. It's $16 million funding. Like that's a huge deficit here.
So, Madam Mayor, I just want to provide some context to Councilors Nolan and Stephen. So obviously in January, when council deliberating on the 10-year capital forecast, we wouldn't know what was going to be in the pending federal or provincial budget. And we had assumed at that time that there would be recreation grant type programs available. We indicated to council at time of budget deliberations, it's something that we would obviously be monitoring as those respective budgets, senior levels of government were published. And we've identified it in the report as part of your agenda today. There was nothing in either the federal or the provincial budgets that came out in the March, April time period that had a program that would capture the twin pad type project. And so in the revised costing, because we're looking at a 2024 bill, council going to the marketplace and potentially awarding this fall. You can't let a contract unless you know that you can pay the end bill. Once you sign that contract, you're committed to whatever that bottom line is. So we have identified that there is no government grant program that we speak today until what we're projecting to be later this fall, but literally 3 months down the road, the likelihood of a new program dropping out of the sky is pretty low. So we have stripped the government funding out. And so what we have now, is a combination of fundraising from the community, which has been a constant, approximately $2 million. We have some money transferred from internal reserves, but the bulk would be debt financing. So we've always shown debt financing for this project. The order of magnitude of debt financing has grown by 2 factors. One, not having the senior level government grant program, and just a factor of growth in terms of the price structure. And so those 2 elements have grown debt that would be required to finance the building if we're looking at moving ahead with this project in the 24-25 time horizon.
Councilor Rose, and Councilor Tim.
I was just looking at option 2, and we're talking here about finding the gym and then building the rehabilitation of the ACC. So the building rehabilitation of the ACC would have to happen before 2025 if we go with option 2. Is that something that staff is saying is just feasible, or does that mean that we're going to have to spend a year, or just going to do this in North Boundaries if this is option 2 is the one acceptable?
So, Madam Mayor, Mr. Raycroft and Ms. Winter have been looking at what the implications are. And they've also spoken both to Lou Matz, being the architect, tapped into their expertise, as well as our current ice plant contractor, Simcoe. And what would be required, what are the timelines, what are the lead timelines if we were to repurpose or renew, replace the ice plant and all the ancillary elements that go with it, which means new distribution lines, new concrete pad, new boards, new blocks. The whole system gets gutted and replaced. So basically, it's a brand new ice plant system in its entirety. It would be very, very tough. We would likely close the ACC a few weeks earlier than we would normally do in a typical winter season. So instead of waiting till the end of March, it might be the end of the first week of March. For the most part, some rep teams have started to be dropped out of the playdowns, and we can start collapsing some of the users back into the NVCC. We would actually have to be ready to go literally the next week to start with the demolition and removals. It would be tight. Everything has to be properly sequenced. The entire building and property would be a construction site. So that means any of the tenants that currently have leased space in the warm side of the current ACC or wish to be outdoors on the ACC property, it would be fenced off and not available. Effectively, the entire building becomes a construction site, or it's a staging area of materials to support whatever is occurring inside the building. And it would be effectively off limits until the fall of 2025 if we were going to do this in the spring of 25, opening in September of 25. During that window of time, an entire address is off limits, and it's within the purview of the contractor doing all components of the work.
Okay, sorry, can I ask something? So just to follow up on that, that would mean that the market folks that currently use that area would also have to find another temporary place for that particular summer. When it comes to the gymnasium, that is more open to, timing, I'm assuming, if that's correct, if we go with that option.
Correct. So what we have shown in sequencing is effectively once the ice use ends, whatever that date is, then we would migrate into doing the fit up of the building for the adaptive reuse. You could have a pause of a few years if council wished. Doesn't have to be bang bang, but we have done it that way because the Legal Services Master Plan has identified to us that we have a deficit in terms of appropriate warm site programming space for larger recreational type activities. So we have shown it, and it's always been discussed that once the ice component ends, we move directly into construction rehabilitation for the warm side recreational program. If you were to delay it and just say, nope, we're going to take a 2-year pause time period, you still have to maintain the asset. Because if we don't put money into the building, if we're not keeping it warm and things like that, the building will start to deteriorate because it's empty and not used. So, it's one of those things where there are some efficiencies in terms of costs to sequence them and keep the schedule as tight as possible.
Councillor Tilly.
Clarification. Fair question. You said that the pricing is actually 24 million, that the number, I still have 18 million in front of me here.
So it's the number down here, it's on page 8 of this page.
Right, so the number that's represented here is not correct. It's correct.
Well, okay, no. If you look at this, 18 million is for the 18 million is for the ice pad,
Yeah.
the twin pad, and then this is the retrofit
Right.
of the ACT, which is another 5.9 million, which comes out to 24 million, $340,000.
Perfect, okay, I do see those, I just was wondering if it was inflated that much. Not right. That's my first question. Thank you.
Can I just clarify, that the numbers are inflated out as we are not doing the reconstruction of the ACC until in the schedule 2027. We have applied an inflationary factor to that 5.1.
Okay, so my concern is dollars and cents paying for this and where we're gonna get the money and how we're gonna tax this. So can I did some brief numbers here and I just want some, maybe just a clarification of my understanding here. We have to fundraise from our residents. My understanding here is going to be $1 million. I just lost another 1.5 million as of 2025. We're going to go from 245,000 in 2024 up to in 2025 is $1.5 million is what the taxation amount is going to come to fund this that particular year. So we're gonna increase it that much. Is that what I'm reading?
Councillor Tilly, through Madam Mayor to Councillor Tilly. Yes, so the way the 10-year capital has shown, it has shown that the debt will be refinanced through taxation dollars. Assuming that the construction is completed in 2024, we would then begin making our debt repayment in 2025, and those debt repayments are $1.2 million approximately. So that is where that numbering comes in from.
So Councillor Tilly, if you go to the reserve continuity spreadsheet, so that would be page 14 of your spreadsheet. In the lower half, you'll see debt principal balances. And then at the very, very bottom line, you'll see the potential debt repayments. So if I just follow that chart, today, we owe roughly 143 million, I'm sorry, 143,000 on this building. That last installment will be paid out in 2024, and that's why it shows a zero thereafter. Okay, so our debt repayment on the residual current NDCC is roughly $254,490. And our last installment paid is the fall of 2024. Okay, so we're zero out, that debt no longer applies. Starting in 2024, we're doing progress draws to that general contractor, different milestones of the construction cycle. We're showing a principal balance owed of 16 billion, because that's the amount that we've estimated would be debt financed. The installment, the first installment actually occurs in 2025. And you can see it is approximately 1.256 billion. That's the principal and interest, amortized over 20 years at 4.75%. And then as we go along, you'll start to see other projects that are added to the venturing, being the public works building, phase 2 being the equipment shed, and then the third project being the adaptation and rehabilitation of the ACC for the gymnasium. Third project layered on that has a debt. Each one of them has a different amount of dollars that are being asked for. But you can start to see what the total debt carried is through the balance of the 10-year period. And then you can see what the annual payments are in that very bottom column. And by the time we get to calendar year 2028, if all three projects are completed in that time period, based on that 4.75%, with each of the projects being financed over 20 years, our combined principal and interest will be approximately $1.7 million. And as Madam Treasurer just indicated, it would be through taxation to pay that principal.
Councillor Tim.
Okay, so,
It's because not American.
My apologies.
okay. But you were even on it, so it's good. So back to the point, that would mean, and just doing the numbers that I see from a changeover of $254,000, which would be the 2024 numbers, we're now going to look at something of roughly $1 million increase. And just using the numbers that CEO and Emily used, and for every $68,000 that we need to increase this money at 1%, that's 14.71% increase of taxes at 1 year. That's not going to be acceptable.
Carry on, CEO.
So certainly if we use 23 assessment valuation, that 1%, 68,000 is run each year. Our ratio of what 1% raises does marginally increase. Okay, but if you were to take a look at it, $23, 68,000 divided into the 1.256 million. Yes, you're approximately 15% increase in today's context.
So I guess this is where council is going with this and why you say no. So I think that.
So I was wondering if staff have, we're at page 14 of our pension debt repayments. Do staff have an alternative debt repayment schedule showing option 2?
I did not do a full option two, repayment schedule. However, I have done a calculation on it. Option two would require approximately $8 million of funding that would be required through debt. And that would bring your principal and, debt repayment annually to $628,000 approximately. So approximately half. No, that is just the rehabilitation.
Just to be clear,
The rehabilitation of the ACC for $8 million, for the $8.3 million cost, that would be about, we would need to fundraise a significant portion of that.
okay, but that's not option two. That's option two was to do the gym as well as the rehabilitation of the ACC.
Option two, the numbers are wrong.
Numbers are wrong in option two.
Yes, so, 7.5 million plus 600 million is not equal 5.9 million.
True. 9.1. Must be one. Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, for the point of this discussion, there is not $14 million of reserves available to begin this project in the next year. Again, I would assume that we would have staggered these projects and not try and accomplish them in the same year so that we would have a chance to build up some reserve funds. So that is why I was suggesting that since the critical ice plant is the harder deadline if we wanted to maintain 2 rings, I was suggesting that we would move forward with that portion of the project first. So that $8 million of project we would have to have debt financing of $8 million for that portion of the project. And then we do have some funding available for some of the others, so I was anticipating an $8 million debt repayment on that particular portion of the project. And then the gym would follow in subsequent years. Again, that would again be, the majority of that would again be debt financing. As we don't have $14 million in the
Councilor.
Okay, so this is kind of where another option going up where we just fix the APB, put in a new ice system. We're gonna have to go into debt for that regardless. We have to do something regardless of that, whether we decide it becomes a gym or whether we decide it remains a gym. From my perspective, it doesn't matter. I think the other stuff is we're just gonna be asking, we're just putting too much on our strain on our taxpayers. And I love the idea of a gym, don't get me wrong, I think it's awesome. But I think we need to see that for that, if we want to do that, and have a proper use that we're not adding another. Because right now it's almost 9 million. If we just delay it to 2026, 2027, it's going to be 12 million, and so we need to save up for this kind of stuff. We can't do that, we just can't do that. Yeah, so this is why I'm like, I think the only thing that I'm comfortable supporting is whatever we need to do with CCC, whether it's put back the ice rink to make it all beautiful, or whether it's turn into gym and go down to one ice arena.
That's awesome.
The original NECC, do we have an approximate cost of what it cost to build this original NECC?
Madam Mayor, going from memory. I believe when we captured everything, it was monies that had to be captured after the fact to zero out certain accounts.
Yes.
My recollection is approximately 16 million. However, there was a significant contribution against that project by senior levels of government.
12 million.
I apologize, I can't remember what the overall contribution, but it was
12 of $16 million was paid by the federal government.
Yeah, federal provincial.
And there is no chance of federal or provincial government money coming in there.
Madam Mayor, through Councilor Officer, there's nothing in the 2023 budgets that were approved by both the federal or provincial government, that mirrored anything similar to what we benefited from in 2009, 2010, that allowed support here. If the economy goes sideways, who knows what might drop out of the sky? But in the present approved budgets of the respective governments, there is nothing of interest. The finance minister federally has sent an internal memo to federal departments asking them to shave $15 billion between now and March, which is the end of their fiscal year. So they seem to be going the other way in terms of their spending patterns.
So then the monthly payments that have, or monthly or yearly, I don't know if we paid for this building monthly or yearly. Is it showing now there's 254,000? Is that 254,000 left? Or were we paying 254,000 a year? That sounds awfully low.
Madam Mayor, through to Councilor Officer, so 15 years, the amortization period, the township was paying for principal and interest $254,490
15.
over 15 years.
On a debt of 4 million. I also wanted to say that it's our time. I mean, Wellesley got grant money and funding money just before the budget. And that's a contract by the feds and the province. They can't take that back. Nothing's happening right now. And nothing's gonna happen in 2024. So it's just the timing because we put the drawings were getting together and everything else, but there's going to be no funding. Now, in 2-3 years, things may change. So that's why your capital forecast is a moving document, because you have to go, well, this is different than when we did it before. You know, we did this just months ago, hoping that this would happen, that we could be able to do all this. And now the reality is, in this situation, oh, Wellesley made the taxpayers, what did the taxpayers in Wellesley get charged for the president conference? 14% increase?
I don't know. I can't say what percentage of that was directly attributed to their new recreation complex. They had a double-digit increase, but I call them. I can't tell you what percentage of that went directly to those debt finances.
So,
So, sorry, can I finish my?
Go ahead.
So, so then I don't understand why it's a big rush to, like, let's take option 1 or let's take option 2 or let's take option 3 right now. Why don't, like, if we're thinking about a build in 2025, why don't we wait until the next, delay it a year to see what the next budget comes out with? And then decide whether we need to fix the ACC or whether we can afford to build a twin bed. I agree, that's a lot of money to build a twin bed. I'm not brushing that under the table. I know what this community needs. We've had studies on what this community needs. I don't think we need a gymnasium. I think we need a second ice surface that needs to be, because for years our kids have been shipped out to Cambridge to play hockey. And if we want people moving into air from Cambridge, and they gotta turn around and bring their kids back to Cambridge to play hockey, that just doesn't work. So if we were to delay it and like not make a decision on one way or another right now and wait to see what the funding's like, if there's no funding in 2024 to 25, let's say, then we can revisit this discussion and say, okay, look, the government's just not doing anything. And then we can decide that. But I just don't want to jump the gun now, because coming out of COVID, this is the new reality right now. It might not be the new reality in a year or two.
that's exactly what I said to you. Is that we don't have to, but the problem being, it's go ahead, see in the name.
So, Madam Mayor, I just want to, council will make whatever the decision. My one caution is, if we sit on the sidelines for a calendar year, then we will not have a second ice surface available for the commencement of the fall 2025 ice season. Because the physical timeline to build a new complex as an addition here would be 16 to 18 months. So we would artificially drop down to one ice surface for the 25-26 winter season. And all ice activity that's going to be hosted in the township would have to be in NCC. And ice users would have to look at external ice to make up the shortfall of losing for that season, the availability of the ACC. No, we know that we will not get a TSSA license for the pressure vessel. Now, we've identified in this report, council could just spend today dollars, $166,000 for the pressure vessel. But what Simcoe has told us is the rest of the system is antiquated. They don't know what they're gonna get into the moment they open up the ice plant and, for lack of a better term, bolt on the pressure vessel. There could be other issues that become apparent as they deal with that singular issue.
Council Norman.
So that's what everyone's talking, everyone's saying, I think there's an option 4, which is basically, let's change the ACC into a gymnasium. Let's take these plans that we direct for this twin pads, put on the shelf, and let's wait until federal programs come around. And we have to be prepared for 2025 or 2026 in 2 years. We have to be prepared to have one ice surface. And then if the funding becomes available, then we build a twin pad, because Councilor also said before, he doesn't want to pour any money into the ACC with that ice going. It's old antiquated, so he wants to have a new twin pad. So if that's what we want, and ultimately end up with this twin pad, then why do we pour more money into the ACC? We might as well turn the ACC into a gym, get that done. Get about trying to rehab it in 2025, and plans in the shelf. Wait until funding comes available in 2 or 3 years when the government's changed, and then we're ready to go with like that. So maybe it's going to be 2 years of being lean and only having one ice surface, but long-term one.
Councillor Tim.
Agree in principle, but the only slight change I would make, and it would just be to help so we plan for that. Then I agree that would be something that would make more sense than trying to guess what the next steps would be. Maybe, so we're being told 2025, we're done. We can't use that as an ice pad anymore. But do we need to, and this is the part where the $5 million to renovate it. We need to spend that $5 million to do that at this point. That's the only question I go with that, is that maybe this is going to be a tough period for the next little while. And I'm just thinking, as a person myself who pays taxes, I'm going to appreciate the fact that it's not higher. And I'm very proud of where guys have been and continue to be, and other areas are increasing the art, because it helps everybody to live without having to go further and further down here.
Christina, you're next. Alina.
If I can just add to this conversation, in that $5.5 million is some necessary repairs to keep the building functional. We felt that there would be savings to roll it into the gym conversion as well. If you want to keep the building just kind of operational, it's $3.5 million. It really needs for the roof, the parking lot, the exterior walls. That is what we are still looking to spend. So that is why we were projecting for cost savings to do more. But if we were to just do the gym facility alone, again, we would at this point have to do a significant portion of that as debt financing, but it would reduce the debt repayment between the phase 2 at the Public Works and the conversion of the gym. It would just be under $500,000 of annual debt repayments.
So I just wanted to mention something, like I said before, whenever happens to ACC, I think we need to fix it and either make a decision. But when it comes to gymnasium, I do think that we need to think about that really seriously, because one of the problems that we're having in here and in the surrounding area is just childcare, and what do you do with kids in child camps and stuff like that. And having an indoor facility where parents can ever, set up day camps for the summer or during school holidays would be fantastic. Like, I know that this area is used, but it's pretty small and it doesn't really allow for like some of this development. And it would be amazing to start up more like gym clubs and like fitness clubs. So I know it's a bit of an outlay. So I'm still kind of like thinking option 2 would be really nice, where we do refix that ACC and then we look at putting the donation in at like 2026 or 2026, whatever. I don't think we should just drop it, and I do think there is a need for it in this community, so.
Why are we not? It's confusing. It's tough, it's tough. It's tough because I don't think we can roll down to I'm sorry, I mean, right now we've attracted Silver Stick. We've attracted a lot of readers here. I don't think we can do that. So, but, Christine, you were talking about we could, for $3 million, we can do something to the ACP, but that's not enough. We need to get us through. That would take us to 2025 only, correct?
Madam Mayor, those costs that I spoke of at the $3.5 million, that is to refix the building, projects that need to be done. We could potentially extend some of them, for example, the parking lot would necessarily have to be done right away. But if we don't fix the exterior of the building, then we will have a building that can't function in the fullness of time. So there is a little bit of play over when we fix which portions of it, but unfortunately, the building is nearing its end of useful life without a refurbishment.
See, I'm going to say something.
I just want to flag to reiterate Mr. Brock's comments. Since the building was put up in the 70s, there hasn't been proper drainage, capture of water coming off the roof. And so, the engineering group that we utilized, we passed identified that bottom courses of cinder block are damaged and be replaced. They don't know how far down the foundation that might go. And so, they've looked at proper drainage improvements, repair restoration to the block at the lower portions of the building. We had already identified the new roof, and it was in the 27 time horizon, I think, previously from memory. And they said if you're already there, the scale economies to do that as part of the, I'll call it the envelope work of the exterior shell of the building. And we're obligated to do some AODA interior improvements. We had scheduled some of that work reflected in the pre-budget, and we've had others later in the forecast period. Once again, we're going to be in refurbishing the building, then you do that AODA work with it. So that's where the envelope of 3.5 million. So just to have the privilege of continuing to use the ACC, whether it's going to be for warm site programming or it's going to have a refurbished ice surface. There's $3.5 million today dollars, just to refurb the building. Then on top of that, you've got whatever the expense is to either convert it into the gym and or refurb and replace the ice plant and its associated amenity.
Okay, Councilor Simon has been some question. Can we split the 2025 back to 2026, 2026? That seems logical. I want to be made. I want you to inform debates. I guess no. Move it out further.
I guess the question that we have is, if we're gonna put the money, we're gonna put $8 million into the ACC to keep it going, so we have two pads at all times, then that's gonna extend the length of that building over 20, 30 years. So then we're not building a twin pad until 30 years from now. So like, we'll be at 2026, might move to 2056, because we're gonna put $8 million into the ACC going as an ice surface, then if I'm not wrong, 25, 30 years probably is the service cycle of that equipment. So that basically precludes the twin pad. Or do we want to have a twin pad? Do we have to say, well, folks, we're gonna have a couple of years of one ice surface and then eventually we'll get a twin pad? I don't know what the answer is, but you put the money in the ACC, I tell you right now, we're not gonna put money 2 years from now, another $20 million in the twin pad, having 3 ice.
See, I'm.
So, Madam Mayor, just to echo Councillor Rowland's comment. If you, in the short term, were to refurb the building and replace the current ice plant system, the consultant has indicated to us that that building will then extend its life by a minimum of 30 years.
Council Austin, comments, go ahead.
So the only way to get a TSSA license renewal or whatever is to put $8 million into the ACC. There's no minimum amount we can put in to get that license.
So as identified in the staff report, we've indicated that just to look at the pressure vessel, because that's the element that the TSSA will not recertify in September 25. In today's dollars, just to take out the pressure vessel and insert a new pressure vessel is $166,000. We've identified that text in this report. What the design architect, as well as our current ice plant contractor has said is the existing ice plant, its distribution system is already well beyond its normal operating life. There is nothing they can say that there won't be anything else wrong with the system. They don't know whether or not placing a brand new pressure vessel will fit in the context of other deficiencies that may exist with the ice plant. They don't know what will be revealed once they open up the ice plant to make the connection with the new pressure vessel. We have a brine system that takes the coolant out to sort of draw the heat out of the ice pack. It's a very corrosive material. And that system has been in operation since 1977. It's already beyond its normal life cycle. They're telling us the system, to get the TSSA license from the system itself, although it's been maintained well, there's no promises that it won't collapse or fail at any point in time.
So it's $166,000 gamble versus going, as Council Allen said, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever, without 2 ice surfaces. Would it not be worth trying to do that for $166,000 rather than saying we're not gonna have 2 ice surfaces?
So what do you say?
Try and fix it. If it's extended the life. No.
It's 3.
Because we also have another $3.5 million that we have to do to fix the building. Like regardless of which option we choose, as from what I understand from the treasurer, because we have to, regardless of which option to choose, we need to still replace the roof and fix the foundation and fix the lot and put in the iota stuff.
We're gonna have to do for the building.
Christie, is that including the building of 5.9 million? That includes the building as well as the repair.
Yes, Madam Mayor, we were anticipating $3.5 in 2023 for the rehab of the building itself, regardless of what option we choose, and then $2 million to actually refurbish the full ice plant.
So that's for the full.
Yes.
refurbish. So going back to my original statement, if we did the $166,000 to get the TSSA license, the building is not going to be condemned in another year or two. The deterioration may be a little bit more significant, but it's not going to fall apart completely. At that point, we can renovate the whole building. Rather than renovate the outside of the building at 3 point something, which has to be done anyway. What I'm trying to do is that if the twin pad is not feasible, it's not possible, there's no funding, and it sounds like 3 out of 4 councillors are leading to, we're not touching this. What I'm saying is that we need 2 ice surfaces, and is it worth trying to get the TSSA license? It's down,
Get the renovations on the outside, or get the renovations on the inside. Get that license so that ice surface can operate. If it operates for one season and pooches out, we spent $166,000 for one season.
I see what you're saying. You're saying not do the exterior and the parking lot and everything else, just the ice.
Just fix it so we can get that license. And if we have two ice surfaces, and then buy us some time.
Council Rooms and Council Tilly. Bias.
I'm not sure what we'd be buying ourselves time for, to build up our reserves so we can fix it properly. Because I don't think, unless all of a sudden the federal government decides to give us like $15 million, there's just no chance we're ever gonna do it with that. And I don't see that ever happening again, like not in the next decade. And financially, I'm no, maybe I'm very pessimistic, but I don't see that happening. Like, I think those days are over, and everybody's really focused now on just the saving and stuff like that. So, though one sense I like your proposal, and another sense I'm like, we can put this off, but then it's not gonna stay 3.5 million. It's gonna be like 6 million when the building finally comes to them to fix, or whatever, 10 million. So I'm just thinking, do we just bite the bullet, as it were, and just get it fixed in today's dollars, because we're not gonna get a better price tomorrow, it's gonna be more.
Council Tilly.
So just to reiterate, do the repairs, get the building that we're gonna keep anyways, because we're never gonna plan on tearing it down anyways. Just fixing it in now instead of postponing it, but still go along with Councilor Hosner's idea of trying to keep the thing running instead of going out in a big expenditure that nobody wants to pay for at this point, especially not to something that we do. Now, I won't be quite as pessimistic, but right now it doesn't look very optimistic that we're gonna see money coming from the government, but that could change because thankfully, you know, when new people run for office, dollars seem to come out and start going towards public things. So was it kind of the plan that you're saying?
Well, us, coming up, formulated.
Council Rowland.
But I mean, if I understand what the council watching council, they're saying, I mean, we can take a gamble, we have worked 166,000, let's say we go in there and spend 166, say last 2 months, 3 months. Does staff have a backup plan for us to find additional ice somewhere else in Plattsville or Sports World or wherever? I know our kids used to play, you know, Sports World or great places. So I'm not opposed to taking a shot, spending 160 seems a lot of money, but if it doesn't work, we need a backup plan because then we really won't have to.
You have a roof and walls collapse. So not only are you risking, you're doing the bare minimum to keep the ice, but you're putting people at risk. I've been told by our staff that building has to be made up. Has to. It's not an option. The roof is not standing. It has the vision that we've never had, what is it, downpour space. Thank you. It hasn't had that, so there's been, the whole integrity of the structure is in trouble. I can't say, let's fix the ice and buy some time while the building is in danger. I can't do that to people.
Plus, there's no guarantee that it's just 166, right? Like, my staff has mentioned, they could open it up and be like, whoa, wow, now you're at 3 million. And then we'd be like, oh, now we have to. So I kind of favor just option 2, just doing that. I know it's a lot of money, like it's still a lot of money, it's over $8 million to refurbish this building and fix the rink. But it seems like a pretty good option because people will then be more or less guaranteed they have a good season for 2025, 2026 going forward. And I don't like it in that it's a separate area, it's a smaller rink, it's not ideal. And the twin pad is definitely nicer, but it's not within our budget, and I don't think it's gonna ever be in our budget, so I don't know. And then for the gym, that's something we can look at saving more money up for. So that we're not caught in this place where all of a sudden we're faced with this expense, and faced with this problem.
Councilor Lawson.
Sorry, it's gonna be my last comment on this subject. Number one, is a question, number two will be a comment. The question is if we were to refurbish the ACC, the ice surface would remain the same size, or would there be a possibility of taking a couple of rolls of cement out and making it a proper size ice surface? And then after he answers, I guess I'll my comment.
So that there, no, there's very limited inches to gain. Essentially, the building as we know it is at its south lot line. It's 18 inches from the exterior wall to the south property line. So we have no ability to extend the building and make it a 200-foot ice surface. And concurrently, in terms of width, those are solid cement risers where the bleacher seating is, and the removal of that would be quite significant. And proportionally, you're not able to lengthen the ice surface. You don't want to exaggerate the width, because then from a plain surface, it's distorted.
What if you took it back to the old sense? That area and then that's not used, and it's only common,
So we would remove then the community hall on the second floor.
because it's a bracing building.
It's limited, so you would need the full span clearance to play hockey. So we would have to remove the community
I
hall
get that.
and use, for lack of a better term, that cavity. That cavity, for the clearance to play hockey.
So then the last thing is my comment, when we're looking at, facilities for our township, nobody has talked about the money that it generates coming in. Like our soccer fields, we have nice facilities here. We continue to have nice facilities. It generates a lot of traffic in this town. Council Roman knows when that Silver Stick tournament comes into town, everybody's licking their chops. Food Town's busy, Tim Hortons busy, downtown's busy. Anybody that's open is busy, home hardware is busy. And that's called supporting your business community, which is a factor when we think about spending money, because spending money, when we say we're just wasting money by putting another arena in, that's not the case. When you put in, provincially, acceptable, facilities, then you start getting provincial events and you start getting teams that, like, I mean, we would never have the Sens at the level we have now if we just have the ACC. So there's a lot of things that proven, and the use of this center is proof that if you build it, they will come. And I know it's a lot of money, but having that facility here will generate a lot of tax dollars, and it will support our business community for years to come. So that's just the added to it.
Councilor Roman and Councilor Wilson.
Member, I don't disagree with what Councilor Ross was saying. What I'm saying is that we have to make a decision. Do you want to have a twin pad at some point in time in the future, right? Which will fulfill everything he's talking about. Then we won't have two ice services for a few years, or we pour the money into the ACC and have two ice services, but then we won't have twin pad. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. We want to have two ice services. If that's the real goal, then let's fix the ACC. Let's have two ice services. If the goal is to have a twin pad, then we have to be prepared that we may not have two ice services for a while, but eventually we'll have a twin pad. That's really what it comes down to. That's the question.
Councilor John.
So everybody agrees that at this point in time, what it's built up to, we need choice services, mayor needs, and North Harbor needs two ice services. This is what I heard you adamantly say in the hearing.
I think so.
That's right.
Yeah, it's okay, it's all right, I did nothing wrong. CEO McNeil, I'm gonna ask you a really odd question. How is Cambridge gonna build a magic complex? Is there any funding for them?
We're talking about the recreation complex in the southeast corner.
Yes. That's right.
So they have good portion funding for development charge because it's being attributed to the growing nature of their community because they're adding a new pool. They're adding to their inventory pools, so that portion is development charges. The gymnasium component, the multi-purpose room, portions of that are paid for the development charges, but they will be incurring yet financing to pick up a significant portion of that estimated 115 million to bring that project to fruition. And right now, they don't have government funding either. The same reasons we just talked about. So, you know, they're wrestling with the big ticket item and, you know, how do they fund that project in the present time period? Everyone's trying to find alternative funding sources. And everyone's looking at the secret levels of government to assist with the legacy 50-year type life program. So
Councilors, I'm gonna go one by one. What do you think? Councilor Austin?
See the twin plan goal.
So that would move the twin pad out because it's in the design phase now in 2025. So you're saying move it out to 2026, 2027.
I mean, unfortunately, we can't have our cake and eat it too. It's either fix the ACP or, as Councilor said, we might have to go down to one ice pad for a couple of years. I don't know what the best solution is. I think the best facility we can have and utilize for the next 50 years is a twin pad, not fixing the ACC and having a pad down there. And staff has already identified yearly savings of having two twin pad together. So there will be savings. Yes, it will cost a lot, but facility wise, in order to, I guess you say, compete with all these other centers that host these top end tournaments of that, I think it needs to be here.
Councilor Tony.
I want to hear, there's no question on my end. Without funding, we shouldn't move forward in building this one at this point. That's my first opinion. Second opinion is I don't know how we describe it. I was talking to Councilor Roman about this probably back in December, November. We were talking about the possibility of there being a chance that we could squeeze by with one pad if we had to financially and just have to make some changes, shared ice at certain times for practices. Things that used to have to happen back before there was the ice surface. That, you know, these are things that be sacrifices by the residents is for a bigger picture. Do I agree with Councilor Osner about this is the better investment? I think this is the better investment. I think we would definitely regret not investing in a better investment at the first time instead of trying to do the smaller one, because in the long run, we will always pay more to do it later.
Can I ask both of you, when you say, so are we gonna desert the ACC? Is that what you're saying?
I didn't, the dessert in the way of ice, not dessert in the way of renovations.
Okay, so
or something.
renovation to make it nice, it's almost 6 million.
So I see, sorry, just to debate that, partly, sorry, I see on the facilities for 2020, sorry, I saw $300,000 earmark. on that.
That's just for the building.
That's just the building, yeah, that's just, that's the building of this, but that's just maintained to make sure it doesn't fall down the diet. Which is, again, we have to, we spend that amount to keep it from further decaying. But not further on, if the better investment, long-term for everyone is the Twin Ice Pad. And it would do better for the community, but not well for the current tax situation, meaning an increase of 50% in a year and a bit. That is, I'm really still at two different odds at this point. I haven't 100% decided, I still need to talk about it.
Before I go to Anita, go ahead, Kristen.
Madam Mayor, if I can just clarify, the 385,000 you see is the design cost.
That's right.
Of moving it into an ice, a rehabilitated ice pad. The cost to maintain the building was estimated at 3.5 million.
Now, Anita, councilors.
So I don't really use the ice here, my kids never use the ice here, so I don't feel I can really speak to the. Cambridge or elsewhere for our property because it's closer than. So if this community is fine with sacrificing and going to one ice pad for an undetermined amount of years, because it is going to depend on an undetermined amount of years. Like, we don't know when this funding can come in, it can come in next federal election, we could have nothing. And in meanwhile, there would just be one ice pad. And I don't think if we drop the ACC and say, okay, we're just gonna kind of fix it, I'll sit there. That it's going to be very easy for us to then say, oh, actually, we changed it. Check back to ice. Right, because if we go the route of, we are going to throw the dice and go with twin pad, because, and I agree with you, Council Officer, that is probably the better. Thing for the community, in one sense, but the community will then have to sacrifice undetermined years. Until we either A, have the funding in place and save up our own little, you know, we definitely have to save up for it and have funding, and then who knows, that could be a decade. Right? So if that community's fine with that, I'm cool with it. I do think though, that regardless, if we decide to go that route, we really do need to turn the ACC to a gym.
So what are you saying? Is it a gym, is that what you?
I would actually prefer to have a proper gym, but I do think that we need to turn it into a usable area for the community. We can't just let it sit there. And I think that if we want to go to the pad route, then it's $5 million to turn it into something that's useful and enjoyable by the community still, even though it's not like that, I might go for it. Because like $5 million or like $3.5 million is just like to keep the roof from falling down, right? So an extra $1.5 million, no big deal. So if, like I said, if the community sleep with it, I'm okay with putting off the ice pad. But if the community really feels that, no, we can't wait a decade, then we should be renovating. So, yeah, like I'm looking to Councilor Osmer and Councilor Roman for their wisdom.
Councilor.
The dream was always twin pad, that's what we signed up on the CCG with, that's what we give our money for. I put money into this facility because I wanted a twin pad. I live next door to the old ACC, the old barn, as we call it, and, you know, Derek and I both know it's not in great shape. Do I want to put more money into the price? Probably not. So I would be more inclined to say, let's turn the ACC into a gym. Let's wait until funding is available for the twin pad, and that's 2 years or 10 years, whatever. I think community would rather have that dream than us invest $8 million in the ACC and then say, oh, guess what? Now you're waiting for 2060 for a twin pad. I don't think we would be very happy with that option. So I think gym now and wait until funding is available for twin pad.
Okay, this is really hard to do. I don't think we can go about 2 weeks. I think it'll have a huge impact on the community. I think we'll use so much dip. I think we'll use a lot of events, and I think it's an indefinite amount of time. But what I'm going to ask is one of the councils to make a motion So, would you thoughts into a motion and we'll go from there and actually be ready to make the motion? Councilor.
I make a motion to council officer second that we move to convert the ACC into gymnasium, that we take the plans for the NDCC that we've drawn up, and we put plans on hold until such a time that federal and provincial funding is available. And then we move forward at that time with construction of the second path.
Councilor Austin, will you second? You can say no.
I'm not 100% sold on gymnasium, to be honest with you. Putting the money into the gymnasium. I'm really mean. I'm tossed between what Council Rome says. Let's just fix the ACT, and that's our second iPad, or we wait. I don't want to wait 10 years for a second iPad. 2 years going without a second iPad in this house, I think would drive people crazy. 10 years, no. So I don't know. I like the option of going with the total refurb of the ACC or doing a twin pad. I'm not convinced we need another gymnasium. That's my.
Councilor Tilly. Oh, did I just?
But-
Who seconded? Anybody second Councilor Rowland?
So Ed, sorry, just another, I'm just looking at numbers. This is one of numbers because the ultimate's gonna have to pay for this, right? And that's a yes. If I look at what the property tax increase would be on my property, and I have a small house, I don't have a big house, I would not want to afford to live in Northumberland and happy to do so. So my property taxes, we increased it 15%. Basically, if we went with, and we went forward with that, and I know I'm jumping out of what we're just talking about, it'd be about $500 a year, right? It increase $500 a year. That's not outrageous. It's not something that's easily absorbed. It's not something, especially when things are more expensive. But looking at it, if it's $500, the cost to do the ACC, trying to do this intern, and I'm not saying we wouldn't do it as well, because in the end, I do agree that we do need more space inside for people to do things. So
when you say do this, do you mean that gym or?
not the ring. So I'm separating, I'm agreeing that this is a better investment for the long term for the area, and we put it up 4 years and it might cost an extra $2 million, $3 million to do it. And that's a huge cost. So looking at it from the point of view, if I was gonna have to pay $500 myself to increase what we have here in the NDCC. If I was just gonna get a gym to replace and we'll lose that, and again, just sitting. If we were to go, say we were to do, excuse my answer, I'm still verbally still saying. If we were to build the ACC into a new, or just renovate it, so typical for $9 million, that's actually 56.25% of the actual cost of putting in this twin pad. So we're over 50%, we're putting into something that, when I listened to the officer speak about the barn that I used to play in when I was under 18 and all the things about that place. I appreciate as a child being able to play there, but it's a museum in itself. It's an old way of playing hockey. We don't do that, and we wouldn't want to continue investing in that. We didn't have to, not to knock our heritage, but that's just one thing. So if we're going to put that extra money into something and do it, then I don't know. I was saying, okay, so 15% increase is a huge increase in the taxes. But what are we getting out of it? So I'm not bringing back out there, but what dollars and cents we get out of this, what we're going to be doing. you know, one question I asked the CEO is, once we start building, we can't get money, for this, right? We have to have the finance before we start the job, and then if we don't, if we start the job, then we can't get finance after.
Madam Mayor, to Councillor Tilt, I would not recommend the award or contract to build any facility, I don't care what we're talking about, to a general contractor unless you have the funding in place to start paying the bills. Because there's a series of progress certificates that will be paid during the construction period. And the last installment is when you get the keys. So if you can't afford to pay the bill, you shouldn't award the contract. And I don't care what scenario you're looking at. Never award a contract unless you can afford to pay it.
See,
But that's not what, that's always my question, sir. My question was, can we still get money for the twin pad after we started it? And the reason why I'm saying that, it's not that we can't afford it. But if you bought something and somebody said, we came in later, and said, okay, now you can have money towards it, that's the question.
So most government grants that have been framed in the recent past.
Yeah.
Have to represent new projects. They are not meant to be, I'll use the word in stream.
and you have to remember the 15% tax increase that we talked about, that doesn't cover the normal tax increase.
Right.
Which you always said 3.5, so that's 18.5. And if I hear you, what you mean, did I hear you say that you think we should go ahead with the twin pad? 16 million.
I look at 9 million and look at 16 million. That's in my mind, I go, what are we getting out of 9 million? What are we getting in 16 million? We could pick 18 million. So what are we getting on there? And that's what my brain is saying. When I go buy something, I don't just look, when I go buy something, I don't just go look at the price I'm paying for it. I look at the value for it and paying what I'm getting out of it. So that's really where I'm at my brain. I've gone through, we kind of keep on going through. And as I'm seeing it, and I was, prior to this, I was not thinking this way. But as we talk about it is 50% more. But what are you getting value on top of that 50% cost? That's where my thought about this.
Councilor Lawrence.
Thank you, Councilor Chili, for putting that in that way, because it kind of clarified to me that a twin pad is really a really bad idea. Because my groceries cost like $100, I pay $100 for a week since last year, just for groceries. Like doing a 15% increase at this point in time for a nice pad that my family will never use. And a lot of families in North Countries would never use, I think is irresponsible. If we want to put it aside and maybe things will be better some other time, but right now it's finding responsible to do it. So I don't think I really have to hear much, but
Okay, will you second Councilor Lawrence's motion?
your motion was to turn the ACC to Jim.
Something wrong with Jennifer and I just,
No, that's the good part.
fortunately, I can't discuss certain parts of the tree on. I think the room, so I mean, we have purpose.
So you suggested, and that was the motion. Was the movie ended to 20, till 2017, 2027. Well, finance available and, the assistance.
I can second that motion. Sure.
That's all we need. See all
My clarification. When we say we're going to turn the ACC into a gym, you're also including the refurbishment of the building.
So the whole amount, I clarified that with Christine, right?
Fair enough. I just want to make sure,
0.9 million,
because there's two components. There's the refurbishment
yes.
and there's the adaptive reuse. Okay,
But I would say we should wait until the TFSA pulls the certificate, or as long as keep it running until the day they say it's no longer.
Till it dies.
so you would show it in the time period in the forecast that the draft has as it relates to the ACC. Because right now, we're not doing anything until 26 because we're working on the premise So on the current forecast, that there's a twin pad, and we need the ice surface until September 2025, when in theory the twin pad would have been open. So we modeled that the refurb and then adaptive reuse would occur then immediately after that, which would be post September 25.
But
Right, yes.
will the TFSA propose to get at the beginning of 2025 season or at the end of the season?
We will not, so it's due in the August, September time period of 2025. It's a 3-year certificate, and the anniversary date is the fall of 2025.
So. Council Austin and then Council Tim, did you
No, I
know?
was-
Or Council Austin.
I'm not really in favor of converting the second ice surface and air if if this twin pad is a pipe dream.
So the motion is that we move the NDCC twin pad up to 2025-26. And that we try and keep the ACC as a second ice pad until, hopefully till we can get funding.
So nothing's gonna happen until 26.
For 2025-26.
So this will come through another budget process next year. I just don't like the direction of giving up that ice surface for a gymnasium. I don't. I'm trying to figure out, like, Council Alonso's usability.
That we're not there yet, so.
Yeah, we have a huge gymnasium here. That's why we built it.
That's not gymnasium, not basketball. Okay, Council Ramos, you missed.
Sorry, so that over there is logic. You can't play basketball, you can't do gymnastics or anything like that. Then that's just a nice big room where some old, like we need something that's appropriate for our kids and daycare, and day centers and campus stuff like that. Yeah, so it's, I'm passionate about this. Sorry.
Wish we offered this.
Yeah,
Here we are,
yeah, well, that's what we need to offer those services. We need to consider this.
here we are. Come on.
So the motion really is, let's keep the ACC running until 2025, then we will take a gander to see if there's anything to go with the twin pad. I'm not optimistic, but and then we turn the ACC into some kind of adaptive for
We'll
use.
deal with it then. Sounds like, I mean, you're just.
But I do want us, regardless, and if this has to be another motion, I'll be happy to do that. I do want us to seriously consider putting aside funds for a gymnasium.
Go ahead.
So Madam Mayor, staff need clarity as to what council's direction is. No, I've heard this motion that's on the floor, I haven't had a seconder yet, and it's now been massaged 3 or 4 times. We don't even have a motion that's been seconded that can be debated yet. So,
So we will clarify that now. Go ahead, Councilor Owen.
So I think the motion that we're discussing was that we convert the ACC to a gymnasium. And that will occur at the end of 2024-25 hockey season, when presumably in 2025-2026, this will be pulled, right? So as soon as that certificate is pulled, then we'll begin the process of turning that ACC into a gymnasium. And in the meantime, we will show the plans that we have for the NTCC, and we will wait until the federal or provincial governments have funding available. I think the province has $1 billion surplus, so maybe the money will come through. So we put the plan aside and we wait. Hopefully, it's going to turn out perfectly. We'll just transition from one to the other, but maybe we have to have a delay of a year or two. And when it was twin pad. That was the idea that I missed.
Yeah, Councilor, second is Councilor Austin.
Okay, so we're going to give up that second ice surface, and if no funding comes, we're not gonna have a second ice surface for 10, 15, 20 years. So you're saying air should be prepared to survive on one ice surface. I can understand if you're not passionate or you don't like hockey or you don't want to come to air or your kids don't want to come to air. I can understand having that point of view. However, we represent a lot of people in the community and we've had studies done, et cetera, that we need two ice surfaces. So
Councillor Osner, everybody around this table is saying what is best for this community,
yes, I understand.
regardless of where they live. And so that's not.
No, I mentioned Councilwoman said that she would.
Yeah, but she has also said she's backing into Canada.
Yeah.
So,
So anyway, I think that, I don't want to make a motion, I don't want to support a motion, let's say, that says we are getting rid of our second iPad.
so, is any other comment, Councillor Tilly?
So just, I think you know this, but I just want to clarify, Councilor Wozner, that it's not so much about getting rid of the second iPad, it's the second iPad, it's not going to be functional anymore. And then this is my, I'm going to be 100% honest with my mentality here. I'm going to agree with the motion, but in my mind, I'm going to still try and see if there's something we can do to keep that. So at this point, I can agree with that motion, but I may change my mind.
Okay.
Okay, so
We're doing a capital forecast, I think you. So,
Can I answer
Yes.
this question? Before all this discussion started happening with this gymnasium, I liked Councilor Wilm's suggestion, saying, putting the money into the ACC, fix it completely, we'll have that ice surface. That's a security blanket, that's at least a lesser expensive way of doing it. I'd rather see that happen than to see it, to say, okay, we're gonna shut it down, make a gymnasium out of it, and pray that some money falls into our lap, so we can have a second ice surface.
Madam Mayor, so just to Councilor Austin, I'm confused because you gave us a big passionate speech about how much you wanted to have a twin pad up here. And I said originally that we should refurbish the ACC and forget the twin pad. And then you convinced me that we should go with the twin pad at all costs, that's the best investment. So then I thought, okay, let's not refurbish the ACC, let's turn it into a gymnasium, keep that thing going, have a twin pad up here. That's what Dream was. And now you're changing your mind and saying, no, I don't want a twin pad. Now you want to refurbish the ACC. So I think we need two ice surfaces. I agree with that. I'm trying to find a compromise because I thought everybody wants a twin pad. If the solution is just to fix the ACC and leave it, so be it, whatever. But I thought we had a big discussion about how as Councilor Chili said, this was a better investment. So now I'm extremely confused and I don't know which way to go now, because I thought you and Councilor Chili were both saying that we want to invest in long-term and getting better.
yes, you can.
Okay, my statement was, the best solution would be a twin pad. I didn't say it was the only solution. I said that's the best solution. The second best solution is fix the ACC. The worst solution is dump the ACC and make a gymnasium out of it. That's clarifying my statements. My statements exactly were the best option for the business community, for the taxpayers, for the kids, for the community, for the tournaments, that is a twin pad. But it's not the only option. If that's a pipe dream and it's too expensive, the fallback would be fix the ACC up, the ice surface the building, do everything that. Then the talk started happening about this gymnasium. And so all of a sudden now we're getting rid of the second ice surface to make a gymnasium. And that I don't agree with. That I don't agree with.
So my thought of the gymnasiums, and I think I agree with you, Councilor Austin, that the twin pad is definitely the ideal. And that and it seems to be in the leisure master plan, that a second ice pad is really important. Then the second one will be that the ACC will be refurbished. My thought was, if we really wanted the twin pad, then we should make the best use we can of the ACC after the ice option is no longer available. And one of the best things for it is to turn it into a place where kids in the community and stuff like that can hang out. Exactly. So I think we're on the same page.
It's just a timeline how we're gonna do it and what we're giving up to do it.
So if we, yeah, so if you feel that this community will be served, I think in the short term, specifically, this community would be better served if we turned the AC, if we went and we did the fixing of the ACC and kept it going as an ice. Short term. Long term, I'm not so sure. I think that Councilor Tilly was bringing up some great points, and I think you also brought up some great points about the long term, how the twin pad would be beneficial for the community, because, you know, then we can have tournaments, and everything on business, and I was really quite excited to hear that, because you're right, and absolutely 100% correct. So the question is, we're stuck with this short term problem with long term implications, and it's really, so we're kind of going around. And it's really hard to, yeah, so I would be happy to vote for either adaptive reuse of the ACC or to turn it back into it, or just do what's necessary to keep it as a nice rate. But either one of those options, like especially the first option, really does going to limit our hockey community. And if they're for the long term, right, then they, because if we invested $9 million to turn that back into the second arena, then in 4 years, if funding becomes available, would we really want to, for 24 million or whatever it is, that's gonna be a hard thing to wrestle with. So I'm happy to vote against this motion and vote for another motion that says fix the ACC. Yeah, but just, yeah, as long as no.
See, over here, another thing, if we left the ACC for as long as it will, and we watch for funding, and scoop it when we can, do we still have to refurbish the roof anyway?
So, Madam Mayor, building facility audit that was done in 2019 has indicated that by 2027, we will need to replace the roof.
So we've got time. We've got time. So why don't we just move the date out from the NDCC twinning to 2025? And why don't we reevaluate that?
Or I need to have an understanding. What are we doing for September 2025?
Well, actually, before that, we'll have another capital forecast meeting, so several of them, and we will be.
Yes, but Madam Mayor, we've got drawings coming to you in 2.5 months. Are we going to the market? Or are you going to just receive the drawings on the twin pad and put it on a shelf for an indefinite period, hoping for future funding?
That's what I thought I would. Yes.
So are we putting any money into the ACC structure? Keep it in a state of good repair.
In 24,
I'm asking,
in 24, I'd say no.
are we going to deal with the drainage issues and the block and things like that in 2025?
Yes,
Okay,
Councilor Taylor.
So if I can propose what it is that you're, I think you're looking for, because we can't just let our infrastructure keep on getting destroyed. So I would propose that we do start putting it out for tender, the repair of the ACC, and we put it out in 2024. That we want to repair the infrastructure that is collapsing and is needs to be repaired, so the roof and all the blocking, everything. To for a repair that when the facility does need it in 2025, that we're ready to do that work and repair on it at that point. That would be my motion, I guess.
just so I understand the sequence. As it relates to the ACC, council wishes to set aside these dollars to be adjusted for 24 and for 25, but for 24, we wish to set aside the design fee to do the professional services work, facilitate the rehab of the ACC. That's the 24 spend. And then in 25, once the ice is no longer a viable option, you wish to do?
To be decided. And so, and once we've decided that what has happened. When we went in 2025, or 2024, we spend the money to get a design. In 2025, we move forward with the process of repairing what needs to be repaired in the. We're just use the exact verbiage, adaptive reuse, adaptive, repair, I guess would be, no, just a repair.
This
of the-
is, that's the thing, the
Yeah.
number that we carry into the professional services, we're blending between
Right,
the rehab and the adaptive reuse.
right.
Okay. So if we're doing something in 24. And we're retaining professionals. Are we narrowly defining the professional services design work to be exclusively putting the building into a state of good repair? And in 25, we're doing the spend approximately 3.5 mil to deal with the roof and the drainage issues and the blocks and a wall and the foundation.
But if we do the worst case scenario, I think it's better in this, and think out, and I'm just trying to be, planning. Why not put the money out there, the planning out there for the adaptive reuse? Because if we're not gonna be using it as an ice surface, if that is the worst case scenario, if we're not gonna use it as an ice surface, then we would need to use it as something else. So we would have that design and maybe have an option A and B in that design. Because once the engineers start designing all this, they can make slight modifications and options, I suppose.
So you're going back basically to most that's currently on the floor.
I guess so. I mean, in the end, I need to be 100% honest. I will not be locking in my opinion on what needs to happen with the ACC until my thoughts are put to us, and they're not put to us yet. My thoughts are, to be 100% clear, is that I think there is a small chance that we could possibly keep, and forgive me for saying this because I am an optimist. There is a chance that we could keep the ACC running with some support from, and there's a thought in my head, so don't come at me too hard yet.
Go ahead.
It's because of the trades I work in, what I deal with. Maybe we can get some support, maybe get some funding from businesses to actually do the repairs. That $180,000 might not cost us that much. If we can do something, and it's just a thought in my head, so don't come too hard at me, and if I need to, then honestly, I propose we just wait for a little bit, but I had some thoughts, and maybe we can keep this thing going, because I do think we could reach out and say, what can we do? Would you be willing to commit a certain amount of resources to help us keep this ACC running for the community for a short period of time, to keep, so we don't lose our second ice pad? To reach out to the trades that do this work and reach out to community, because the company I work for, Trademark, has community members that live here that use this ice surface, that use our ice surface currently. And I want to have some conversations about getting money for doing this. And that's where my head's at. I wasn't gonna say that up front, but I'm taking that.
Clarify that to the pressure test.
That's correct. So to quit repair and get the TSSA approved for further use for another 3 years.
For the pressure test.
Whatever needs to be done, because that's what we do, to keep that system running for another term. That's what I'm proposing, but I don't know enough, so I had to have a conversation with you to understand it better from the technical aspect. So that's what.
So can we not simplify this? Like, I don't understand why we can't go ahead and say, in 24, we'll do whatever design work is needed, or we'll put the tender, the repairs of the exterior, the roof, the siding, the bricks, and all that stuff, because that needs to be done anyway, whether it's a gymnasium or whether it's an ice surface. And then say in 20, that can be done in 25. In 25, we can revisit where we're going with the arena, because that money that is gonna spend on fixing it needs to be done anyway. And then at that point, in 25 when we say, okay, let's make a gymnasium out of this in 26, then we can go with the design and get the work done in 26, or we say, you know what? Twin pad thing, that's getting further out of realm, so let's do the ice surface in the ACC. Does that not give us an option then in 25 to go down this street or go down this street? Whichever happens, we can't predict what's gonna happen in 2 years, but
So I have Council Rooms, the seal, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on Councilor Austin's. Regardless of whether you are in the longer term going to do an adaptive reuse to the ACC and turn it into a gym, or you're gonna eventually just refurbish the current ice plant, modernize it, the building's got to be done. So I understand the bricks and mortar component of the building and its exterior shell, we should be doing the design work for 24 and
Except 25.
doing whatever that scope of work is in 25. So I understand that aspect. I would ask council to start populating those other deliverables in the next 2 to 3 year period. Because we do capital forecasts. And with that, those staff commitments in terms of how their time is allocated to projects. Remembering, there's other projects in this capital forecast that are being done in the same time period. So we have to start looking, what are those implications on staffing and the resourcing? The other is cash. The whole point of our 10-year capital forecast is to better understand what our funding commitments are going to be over the 10-year period, and to start putting away those nickels and dimes to try and deliver the forecast. Every year, twice in every year, we talk about the 10-year capital forecast. We do this formally as budget deliberation. And in August, we have a workshop. Okay. And we make adjustments to that forecast on a continuing basis as new information becomes available. Just costs. We move projects back and forth, we rescope them, whatever. But at least it gives us a framework in which to better understand our dollar exposure and to start looking at how it affects our reserves. Finally, we need to signal to the broader community what our vision is at this moment in time and how we're going to deliver things. If we're going to witness a disruption of ice surface, this is one scenario. Your second motion may be staff, start working with adjacent municipalities and see if we can buy blocks of ice through the corporation. And then we resell that ice to our user groups at whatever we charge here, so that we can bridge that shortfall until the second rink is available, whatever that rink might look like. I mean, if there's a general consensus, we need 2 rinks and we want to maintain an element of business continuity, there might be an interim strategy. But you need to articulate that to us. We would show it in our forecast, but we'd also start doing program sourcing to try and deliver some of those alternative options.
So, Council Rooms, go ahead.
I think we just have to try to make a decision instead of trying to put it off to 20. So there's a lot of things that I think we're doing, the rehabilitation. The gymnasium is really critical, but it's something we can see moving forward. And also something to get into a capital forecast because we started ACC business to make sure. What is critical is to make sure that our users don't lose ice service time. We don't want to hold on services. Do we want to just roll out the clock like Councilor Tilly is recommending, kind of? Or do we want to withdraw the motion that's currently on the table and put in another motion that says we're going to go all in and uses and refurbish that ice? Because again, like, yeah, we can say, all right, well, hopefully that's $166,000, but it sounds like that's a rather dubious goal as well to just say it's gonna be that much, because we might end up having to spend that 8 million regardless.
Councillor Austin.
Well, I think that. Out of all choices, staff needs directions and it's a fluid document, it can change anyway. Then they have the numbers already of a full rehab of the ACC, plug that in. Where the exterior maybe starts in 24 and in 25, the ice surface. Does that make sense, or is it all gotta be plugged into the same thing?
So I think that's a version of option 2, or we just did the rehab, building rehabilitation and a new system of ACC, and I believe that, no, we don't, 2025.
And the only reason I'm agreeing with that is because CO McNeely says staff needs a direction. So rather than us beating this dead horse, let's get a direction. It might not be the direction, but let's get a direction that staff can work with.
Yes.
And they have the numbers for this direction already, so just pick option, whatever option.
So if I can try and recap. We are going to keep the ACC open with, doing the physical exterior work in that distinct state. For 2024, we will be addressing. We don't know what's coming, 2024 and 25. Imagine what's happened in 6 months. We went from a twin pad, definite in the budget, to the scenario study. We don't know what's gonna happen in the next 6 months. So no doors are closed yet. Yeah, so if I can reiterate what you said, is that we do the exterior.
Well, what's option 2? What was option 2?
So here, option 2 was the gymnasium, but let's put that aside, because I agree, that's something we need to see before, or I think about. Option 2 was we rehabilitate the ACC and put in a new ice system. And that was $8 million. It would make us go into debt, but I think it would provide a better option.
I'm just looking to give an option to staff to plug into the budget so that they have something to move forward with. Like we said, it might change next year. We might change it completely next year. It might be a gymnasium and then let's wait for Twin Pad, or it'd be like, Twin Pad isn't gonna happen. It's just right now. We're guessing, we're throwing darts and guessing, like I can't tell you what's gonna happen. I mean, I'd love to see some funding and have our ultimate facility, but if it's not gonna happen, then we have to have option B, right?
All right, so maybe we can have council withdraw his motion, and I can put a motion forward that we,
Actually, we don't need a motion for capital, but that's just needs to be direction to staff.
No, I would make a motion, I want a resolution that council likes after that.
Christina,
May I suggest that this is what I am hearing, and I'm not trying to put anything into anyone's mouth, but this is, if I could summarize what I am hearing, that current motion would be that we would do the adaptive reuse, or sorry, we would do the ACC rehabilitation design so that it could be functional in 26 as an ice surface still, and then in 29, the construction of the gymnasium at the building.
so this is kind of where I was heading for, yeah. So I think the short term is that let's fix up the ACC and make sure that the ice surface doesn't disappear on the residents. And then the longer term goal is let's save up some pennies and nickels, dimes, and whatever else is necessary. Yeah, to get some gymnasium in this area. Because I really do think that's. I can put that motion forward if that is something that we want to do.
want a second? Do I have a second?
So you're talking about doing the full rehab of the ACC.
In 26,
According to the timelines that were proposed, so that we would not have any interruptions within the regular hockey season. So that we would have, so right now, from what I heard from CEO McNeely earlier, was if we went with the building rehabilitation new ice system at ACC, they would close down the ACC like maybe a month earlier in 2025. So that they have sufficient time to do all the repairs, fix the ice surface and do all that's necessary to make sure it's ready for the 2025 surface and it's season and we're ready to rock. So that is my motion, is that we follow through on that.
So just from a timeline perspective, that means in the fall of 2024, we're going to the marketplace to retain a GC, general contractor, to gut the interior or the adaptive reuse, for the replacement of the existing ice system, okay, in its entirety, so that it's available for September 2025. So basically, we would do the design work in 24. And starting, I'll say March of 2025, we're physically in the ground doing work. So that it's open in September of 25 as a refurbished rink, refurbished exterior skin of the ACC. And then you wish to push out into the 29 time period, which the creation of a gym here.
Yeah, and I would really like to see us create a reserve fund for that or something so that we have a dedicated stream going into it so that we can make sure that this is not just debt funded.
Or the debt is reduced in its exposure.
Yes.
Okay, because that's how we normally look at our funding, that's why we do the 10-year forecast, okay?
Councillor Jelly, do you have anything to say?
I actually just had a question, just bring it full circle, because you already mentioned it, and like it's. What was the dollar amount that we spent to, plan or get to put it out for the design for the twin pad and the NCC? How much did we spend for that?
You know, the more you discuss stuff, the better it is. If you get every option on the table, then nobody just wants. I know it feels like hell.
Well, to me, it's not so much that this is, if we want putting pressure on me, is staff wants us to make a decision of what we gotta start saving.
And this
what
is
we
the
can.
type of forecast,
I was,
which isn't, it's going to
if
be
it was-
a document, but it's not. It's flexible. to do it. You know,
Madam Mayor, through the council, Tilly, the design fee to bring us to tender ready documents for the twinning is $390,750.
We spent that.
Well, we will be
promised that.
spending that by the time we bring you to tender ready documents. Then there will be another round of professional fees if we move to construction. Because of the project management and contract administration associated with the actual physical build. But just to get us to design drawings, ready to go to the market, $390,750 for the twin pad, and that project has already been awarded to the funds.
Which that's 66% inflation.
In terms of design drawings, yes.
Okay. Oh, that's, so where I'm going with that is just. We're spending money, obviously, and we need to keep everything going, and this is something that we do obviously see as a long-term goal, which when. Something that we're gonna sit on because we still want to do it, but not at this point, is what I'm getting sent from a consensus that we can understand that that's the point. And my point is. Sometimes we have to do stuff like this to make it not painful for everybody in the future, but we might need to do some other things. As interim choices as well, so the reason why I'm leaning vague is because my idea is not gonna say more. But I do appreciate that, because it is a big, but that is a huge number.
Hey, Councillor, you remember from the councillor.
Yeah, so my motion is to go ahead with the building rehabilitation and new ice system plan at ACP, which is part of option 2. As, so we did the professional services and design in 2024 with the building rehabilitation and the new light system in place for the 2025-2026.
Sorry, that will take place in September of 24.
What is your own?
Madam Mayor, Community Councilor, Hobson. So, based on the motion that's being framed, with timeline sequencing, when council approves the 2024 capital budget, there will be a budget line of approximately 440,000 for professional services to do design work in support of the building rehabilitation at the ACC and the design of the new ice system at the ACC. The forecast will show in 2025 a spend of approximately $7.5 million. That would be the physical work to do the exterior shell work in terms of the rehabilitation, plus put in all new infrastructure to support an ice system at the ACC.
I just want to know at what time will the clock start ticking for spending money to do that? September
So
24?
if council to be in a position to go to the market in the fall of 2024 to actually do the physical construction work, we need budget approval to retain a consultant and start doing the design work in January. And we'll be going to the marketplace to actually retain a general contractor to do the physical work in the fall of 2024. So they can start doing work in March of 2025 to be open in September of 2025.
So that doesn't buy us another year.
No,
And this TSFA thing, sorry, runs out when?
September 2025. That's why we were saying if you're going to do the twin pad project, we need to go to the marketplace fall of 23, start work physically here in terms of construction in the late winter, early spring of 2024. It's
So
just,
even if we start this design on the ACC, we still need to put it to market in the fall of 24, right?
correct, because there'll be some long lead items and we have to get the right contractor and get it into their work schedule. Because we've got a very, very short window between approximately mid-March to September to do all of that scope of work.
Let's get the motion. Can you clarify the motion again, please?
So my main motion is to complete the building rehabilitation and the new ice system at the ACC in time for the 2025 hockey season. So that there is no huge gap between.
Did you?
And also that we set aside or start setting aside a reserve for a future gym. In whenever located at the NDCC, time TBD based on whatever works out best for everything. 2028.
2020.
There you
Staff want direction. They don't want to try and figure it out because then they'll get blamed for it.
You want in 20, given 28.
Sure.
Beginning or end, pick a month. No, I'm kidding.
Angel.
Somebody could win the one. Did you win the one? You please.
You know, seconder to that motion.
Councilor Lawrence. You clearly agree. If you win,
Everything shrunk, chemo work, so surgery is optional. But it's stopped material. Well, last decade, not true.
So great.
Probably.
So our last pitch back out of this plan would be when?
Fall of 2024. UCell staff, thank you for doing the design drawings for the, I'll call it the new ice facility.
We theoretically have one more budget kick it in can before we say we're done with this.
But you will have expended 400,000 on design work,
I know.
but you have a decision to make.
That we can do.
You have a
We'll only
decision to
be
make.
two. We'll have two because we will have the winter, the winter of
You'll be
2024.
going to the marketplace in the fall. So if you're not willing to let,
Not,
So about one more August I can do now is like 1 year from now is D-Day.
We'll debate this again on budget, right?
Yes.
is
Yeah.
January.
yes,
This provides guidance for staff,
Yeah.
that we definitely are comfortable with going forward between that areas.
I never was good at poker. Yeah, but only one more. This one, four. Is that-
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have it's on the market September 24th, a little over 1 year away.
Go for it, go for it.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Wallen, that council undertake building rehabilitation and design of new ice surface at ACC in 2024, and that council direct staff to establish a reserve for a future gymnasium at the NEC in 2028.
All those in favor? That's carried, thank you. For now. Councilor Bowman, the next one?
Actually, Madam Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
there's one more schedule we haven't discussed.
Oh,
Okay, go ahead.
So I won't put the slide up, I'll just read it very quickly. The last schedule that we really haven't discussed is Parks and Trails rehabilitation. So the major items that have changed on that is we have had to change some of the sequencing and timing. For example, Victoria Park tennis courts and pickleball courts did not really fare well this past winter, so we have moved up the rehabilitation of that into 2024 timeframe. We have also started some public consultations with regards to some of the redevelopment of the rural settlement community parks. And so we have changed the timing of some of those items. There is still the continued enhancement of trails within the schedule. And then as our growth development continues, there is the new development of parks and parkettes as the new subdivisions come on board.
Can I ask the Smith Park? What's happening in Smith Park?
contractor has a series of deficiencies based on the specifications of the contract. And the contractor has to deal with those deficiencies.
Is the contractor dealing with those deficiencies, and if not, what is the process?
So the contractor was out on Friday evening working on one of the deficiencies. With the rain, they really can't get on the site to deal with the other deficiencies. And the other is a legal in-camera item with township solicitor to update council from what we discussed in January.
Thank you. Okay, so Christine, you stated about the parts and that, and that's fine.
That's the end of my presentation unless there are any questions. Yeah.
So, we outlined, we just all that. We said it. I know,
Yeah, you like talking for 12 hours.
it wasn't just me. Okay, so now can we go on to 6.2? Good, Seth? Andrew, or Andrew, goes like he's. I believe Council Bowman, please.
So I'll move by myself, second by Council Tilly, that Senate Report 18-2023 be received and that staff submit for consideration that November 6, 2023 council meeting report. 2024 capital project staff seek to secure pre-budget approval for in order to facilitate early entry into the marketplace with based on long lead delivery, price sensitive projects. And that all comments received through discussion at the August 16th special council meeting return to staff for consideration. As part of the team development of the 2024 budget, associated 10-year 2024-2023 capital.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. And the next motion, please, is Council Williams. Confirming the proceedings.
Moved by myself, seconded by Council Osmer, that bylaw number 3425-23 be finalized to confirm the proceedings of council on August 16, 2023, be read a first, second, third time, and be finally passed, signed, and sealed by the mayor and clerk.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. And Council Tilly, please.
Move by myself, second by Council Williams, that where the business before the council meeting is completed at 8:55 p.m. and may be resolved in the meeting adjourned again on Monday, September 11th, 2023 at 6 p.m. for committee order.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.